Hello. As you're popping on, let me know you're here. I'm going to give it just a minute to get started. I have a lot of material to cover, so I'm going to jump right in just a second. I just want to share it to my page real quick. I ended up having to change the dates around a little bit, so if you catch this on replay, that's completely fine. If you have questions as you're watching it, just type them in the comments and I can answer them whenever you get a chance to watch it, because you don't have to watch it live. I'll still get the comments. And I do want to let you know, had a little bit of technical difficulties today. So I was trying to print out my outline and I realized quickly that I have zero ink. So I will be having to use my outline from my computer. So if I'm looking down a lot, I apologize. Just one of those things. I thought I had backup ink and I have none. So I'm going to share this one more place and then we will get started. I have a lot of material to cover tonight. I actually created this training several years ago. I think, if I remember right, I was still working as a family therapist at the time. So it's been a long time ago. But I pulled it back out and I dusted it off and I added some information to it because I think it's really important. I think it's important that we talk about abuse, sexual abuse of children. If you get online or you get on the TV, you can see it is very much still happening all of the time. Many times we don't talk about it because it's uncomfortable. Many times we don't go there because it's not a fun topic. But if we don't talk about it and bring light to it, it will continue to operate in the darkness and it will never stop. The way we stop it is by educating ourselves, educating others, and talking about it. A secret is only a secret as long as nobody tells. And I know that sounds really like, oh, well, yeah, duh. But that's how things are able to stay in the dark, because we don't talk about them. How often do you find this subject that you talk about it? How often are you educating yourself about it? I wasn't, hardly at all. And then I started doing some digging, some research, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is happening all over the place. It's happening all of the time. And we're going to get into some statistics, if I can get the word out. It's been a long day, but I'm good. And we're going to talk about, hi Tammy, and we're going to talk about symptoms, like to look for in children to say, wait a minute, something may be going on here. And I'm also going to talk about predators. I'm going to talk about how to recognize them, because a lot of times we think that we could pick them out. We think that if there is a crowd of people, we can look through that crowd and pick out who is a predator. And that's not true at all. Most of the time, they're people that we would have no clue that they are actually predators. So that's another thing we're going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about how to keep our kids safe. What are some real practical steps we can do? We're also going to talk about internet safety. That is one thing that I did a lot more research and I added a lot more, because the internet is a huge issue right now with kids and predators. They are all over the internet, all over. And so that's another area we're going to talk about. I will tell you, if you have children in the room, I would probably pop in some headphones, because there may be things that I say that are not age appropriate. I hardly ever do anything. As a matter of fact, this is the only thing that I have ever done that I will say is probably not age appropriate. But some of the things when I talk about the predators and stuff, they do need to know about, but you need to put it at their age appropriate language. So I just want to caution you with that. So tonight, let's start off with defining sexual abuse. And everything that I got, all of my information came from a few different places. I used Google a bunch. I used the internet and found a ton of information. If you want to research this topic, all you have to do is get online. And there are a ton of statistics out there. There are a ton of helpful sites. So I used Google, and then I also have a book, and it's called Predators, and it's by Ann Salter. And she did a study of hundreds of predators. And she spent years in the prison system with them, studying them, questioning them, surveying them. A lot of the information that I'm using, I pulled out of there because it comes directly from their mouth. They talked openly about how they groomed kids, how they groomed families. They gave their stories. They are horrific stories. If you are an abuse victim, if you are an abuse survivor yourself, I would caution you, if you read the book, it is very graphic, because it is the abusers themselves giving their side of the stories. If you are worried at all about getting triggered, do not read that book, because it is very, very, it's very deep. And I will be giving some of the stories that they've talked about tonight, just talking about how they target kids, what kids they target, what families they target, and what they use to target families. I have a ton of information, so I'm going to jump right in. If you can't stay the whole night, that's fine. Jump off, come back and rewatch later, because I do have a lot of information. So what is sexual abuse? It's when something happens to you sexually that you do not want. It can be physical force. It can be threats. It can include physical force, threats, bribes. Anytime someone is in a position of authority over another person and they use that authority for sexual contact, that is sexual abuse. Whenever the other person is stronger, bigger, or older, and they use that to coerce, bribe, or force someone else into any type of sexual contact, that's abuse. The key part that we're looking for is a loss of control and a loss of personal boundaries. That is hallmarks of sexual abuse. It can include, well, let's talk about this. So there's one form is rape. We're all familiar with that. Statutory rape. That's when a male or a female is under the age of consent and the other person is above the age of consent. That can include force or without force. It can be grooming. It can be the person thinks they're in a relationship, but it's still considered rape because of the age difference. There's stranger rape, which is when the person doesn't know the other person. There's date rape, mate rape. Spouses can rape their spouse. And there's childhood sexual abuse, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So some of the sexual contact that especially can come in with children is kissing, touching private body parts, penetration. Some of the non-touching sexual abuse things that can take place is nude pictures being taken. That's huge. There are rings and rings of pedophiles who exchange pictures. They take pictures. They take videos. They may never physically touch a child, but it is still sexual abuse because someone took that picture and then they're using that picture to pass around. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the big ring that was connected to Subway. I mean, that shed a lot of light on it because that one was huge and it made the news. But they're everywhere. This isn't just big time. They're all over the place. Another non-touching sexual abuse would be forcing a child to watch pornography. Even if they're not involved in it, if they are being forced to watch pornography, that is sexual abuse. Or if they're being forced to look at pornographic pictures. A perpetrator exposing their genitals to the child, or the child being forced to expose theirs, that would fall under sexual abuse also. Forcing a child to listen to sexual acts. That a lot of times is grooming. A lot of times the perpetrators will introduce the children to sex acts first through somebody else, and then later on introduce them to them. Another non-touching sexual abuse contact is using computers, cell phones, social media to make sexual advances. When we get into the statistics, I think your minds are going to be blown. Mine was. And I've researched this stuff. When I was in college, this is what I did my papers on because it was so near and dear to my heart because I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. The numbers are staggering and they continue to grow and grow and grow. They're not stopping. Like it's not stopping. It is horrendous. The amount of children that are abused. And I'm just talking in the US. Like the things I'm talking about tonight, this is the United States. I'm not talking about a third world country. I'm not talking about sex trafficking over there. I'm talking about abuse in our backyard, in our home, in our schools, right here. So some of the ways that the sexual abuse often begins. So all of these things that I'm saying, just to be aware of, I'm not trying to create panic. I'm not trying to create fear. I'm trying to create awareness. We have to be aware of what's going on. We have to have our eyes wide open. A lot of times the abuse with children starts with less obvious sexual contact. The abuser may act if it was an accident. Oh, I didn't mean to touch him there. Oh, I didn't mean to touch you there. Or it's just a game. We're just tickling. They may actually touch the private parts of the child while they're tickling or wrestling. And if anything's brought up to their attention, they could say, oh no, that was just an accident. I didn't mean to do that. But what they're doing is they're testing the waters to see if the child tells or if the child doesn't tell. It can be very confusing for the child when this starts out as fun and it's a game and then it turns into sexual contact. Because more times than not, it does not start off with sexual contact. It starts out with a friendship. It starts out with gifts. It starts out with fun. It starts out with being buddies. And then it turns into the sexual contact by the time the child's already connected to the person. So the child could already feel love towards the person, could already feel friendship, and it gets so confusing because the two don't go together and they don't fit together, but the child doesn't understand why. So before we say, now, this could never happen to anybody I know. This, it's okay to learn about it or whatever, but it's happening somewhere else. I want to share some statistics with you. 90 to 93% of child victims know their offender. So this is why stranger danger teaching does not work. The offenders, the majority of them are known to the child and the family. 90 to 93%. Now, every stat that I'm giving you tonight are reported statistics. That means there are, who knows how many that are unreported, because we know abuse does not get reported all the time. Many, many, many times it doesn't. So 90 to 93% of children know their offender, with almost half of them being a family member. Half. Every 9 minutes, CPS, which is Child Protective Service, substantiates or finds evidence for a claim of child sexual abuse. Every 9 minutes. Now, if you've never worked in and through this system of CPS, you may not realize how hard it is to substantiate abuse. It is very difficult. So when they say that every 9 minutes it's being substantiated, that stands out to me. Because I know, because I worked in and around the system, how hard. You can have cold, hard evidence and it can still not be substantiated at times. So when they are substantiating, that's huge. Approximately 1 in 4 adult women and 1 in 13 men were abused sexually as children. Now, in my opinion, that probably is a low number because, again, that is talking about the number that has been reported. Everything I'm giving you is the number that has been reported. 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18. That means if you have 3 daughters, statistically speaking, the chances are 1 out of the 3 will be sexually abused by the age of 18. That is staggering to me. Look at a classroom, how many children are in that classroom. Start clicking off the numbers. How many in one classroom will report abuse by the age of 18? 1 in 5 boys will report being abused by the age of 18. Again, I think these numbers are low because this is how many report. 1 in 5 children are solicited sexually while on the internet before the age of 18. 1 in 5 are sought out for sexual contact. 1 in 5 before the age of 18. 30% of sexual abuse is never reported. Again, I think that's higher. Nearly 70% of all reported sexual assaults, including assaults on adults, occur to children age 17 and under. 70% of all reported 17 and under. Approximately 20% of those victims are under the age of 8. 95% of sexual abuse is preventable through education. That's why we're talking. 38% of sexual abusers of boys are female. Females absolutely can be abusers. It's a myth whenever people say, oh, it can only be a man. Absolutely not true. More than 90% of individuals with a developmental delay or disability will be sexually assaulted at least once in their life. 90%. 90%. At least once. There are nearly 500,000 registered sex offenders in the U.S. 500,000. Now listen to this number. Between 80,000 and 100,000 are missing. That means they're not accounted for. The system doesn't know where they live. They don't know where they're going, and they don't know what they're doing. They have already been proven to be pedophiles and sexual offenders, but the system doesn't know where they're at. 80 to 100,000 just missing. A typical pedophile, now if this number doesn't make your hair turn gray, a typical pedophile will commit 117 sexual crimes in their lifetime. So now we're going to talk about the types of predators. And I want you to keep in mind they actively spend their time searching for children to abuse. That's what they do. That's what they're looking for. If they're not grooming a child, they are looking for a child to groom, because that is their sexual outlet. So think in your mind just about the sex drive of people. Their outlet is children. So they are always actively seeking that outlet. Just as we look for people to date and marry, they are constantly looking for their next victim and grooming their current one. Sorry, I lost my I am not used to using my computer. I always have my notes. The average child molester victimizes between 50 and 150 children before they're caught, on average. They seek out children in places where they easily have access to them. So think in your mind, where are places that our children are easily accessed? Churches, sports, daycare, 4-H, playgrounds, friends with children, significant others who have children. They seek out people that have children in their circle because that's what they're looking for. The list could go on and on and on. I mean, there's children everywhere where they congregate. That's where they'll be. The different types of predators. One is the power predator. He's probably the most recognizable because he rushes in and pushes ahead and attacks his victim. There's no grooming. He's not a smooth talker. He doesn't play games. He is the one who just goes in and attacks. So he's not setting anybody up. He sees his victim and he goes for it and he does the rape or molestation. He doesn't care if it's a woman, a child, a man, a girl, whatever. He's just after that gratification. He really has no parameters. So he's not the smooth talker. He's not the one sitting back grooming anybody. He's just going for it. Those are the ones we hear about a lot because they're the ones that get caught and they're like the serial rapist or the serial killers and those types of things because he's all about just going in for the kill. Then there's the persuasion predator. This is the most common. He looks for vulnerable victims, someone who will allow him to be in control. He makes a small investment with low risk strategy that allows him to test the waters and move on with nobody the wiser if things don't go well. He's a coward, but he's crafty. So he's constantly testing the waters to see how far he can go. They build and use the trust of the children and the trust of the families that have the children. Misplaced trust is the predator's most powerful resource. There's also female predators that fall in these categories also. Women are capable of the same severity of sexual abuse as males. So here are some facts about predators. The Department of Justice estimates that on average there is one child molester per square mile in the United States. And again, these are low because these are reported. But think about that. One child molester per square mile throughout the entire United States. A child is far more vulnerable to someone in the family than to a stranger, statistically speaking. Statistically speaking, the predator will be a family member or a close family friend. Sexual predators spend lifetimes perfecting their skills to abuse children. It's what they do, and it's what occupies their mind. It's their hobby. It's their focus. It's all-consuming. More often, they come through the front door in the day as a friend, a neighbor, a Boy Scout leader, a youth group leader, Sunday school teacher, doctor, coach, family friend, uncle, aunt, cousin, babysitter. They enter into professions that would allow them to be close to children. They are proud of what clever fellows they are. Narcissism is usually their Achilles heel. Okay, now we're going to talk about tactics. Moving right along. Grooming is their number one tactic. It's what they usually always use. Anything besides grooming is what they usually use. They'll spend a lot of time in this area to gain access to the child. They can even use grooming tactics for weeks or months before they try anything, because their whole goal in the grooming is to set the stage so that the child will not be trusted if they tell. And they are also setting the stage to make sure that the child doesn't tell. So this is where they put a lot of their effort. This is where a lot of what they do is going in to the grooming. The offender may also groom the parents by persuading them of his or her trustworthiness with the child. The stages of grooming may include targeting the child. Child sex offenders test for vulnerability and look for emotional neediness, isolation, and low self-confidence, as well as less parental attention. So they're very mindful of the kids that they pick out. They know what they're looking for. They can spot it a mile away. They're looking for a child who has low self-esteem. They're looking for a child who has a bad home life, or looking for a child who has parents who are, for whatever reason, not as involved in their life. They're looking for kids that they can pluck off and get close to because they don't have a strong unit. Or, teenagers, they just go through things. Teenagers just sometimes have low self-esteem. Sometimes they are bullied at school. It may not even be things going on at home. They can have a great home life, but at school they're bullied and they don't fit in, and the predator can pick up on that. Even online. When they're grooming, it can be online or in person, and we're going to talk about internet safety also. Gaining the child's trust is another part of the grooming. They watch and get to know the victim and their needs, as well as how to fulfill those needs. They may introduce secrecy to build trust with the child and distance the child from his or her parents. So they may allow the kid to do something that the parents would never approve of. And from doing that, they're pulling them away from the parent, and they're building this bond of secrecy. Like, I let you have alcohol and your parents never would. Aren't I the cool one? And now we have this secret and we can't tell them. Or they may let the child look at pornography and they have that as a secret. Or whatever. Whatever it is, they're building a bond through secrecy. They also look to fill a need. Once the predator learns to fill the child's needs with gifts, affection, or attention, they take a more important role in the child's life. And this is where they build the bond, really solidify the bond, because whatever is missing in that child's life, that's what they're going to be to that child. They isolate the child. They may offer to babysit for free or do favors in order to find ways to be alone with the child without adult interruptions. Parents may unknowingly encourage this by appreciating their unique relationship. So it could be like, oh, he's just so invested in my child. He's taken him under his wing, and that's a great thing. When all along it could be grooming. Then they begin to sexualize the interaction. Grooming begins with non-sexual touching. such as accidental or playful touching to desensitize the child, so that as they ramp up the touching, the child doesn't resist. The offender then exploits the child's curiosity to advance the sexuality of the interaction. Maintaining control is the next level of grooming. The predator then starts using threats of either guilt. If you tell, I'll get in trouble. You don't want me to get in trouble, do you? I'll go to jail and I'll lose everything. Or they may also put it on the child. If anybody knows what we did, nobody would like you. Everybody would think you were bad. Everybody would be mad at you because you let this happen. You really enjoyed this. So everybody will look at you and they'll know you enjoyed this. This is especially true when it's male on male abuse. They will use guilt and shame to keep them silent. And they will call them all kinds of names and say what everybody will think about them. Sexual abuse always comes with guilt and shame. Many, many, many times it's because the predator has put it there. They can say if you tell your mother what happened, she'll hate you. Or it can also turn into then threats. If you tell anybody, I'll hurt you. The abuser may also blame the child for allowing it to happen. Or they may normalize it and say, oh, everybody does this. It's not that big a deal. Everybody does it. Nobody talks about it. But everybody does it. Everybody in your class is at home doing the same thing, just nobody talks about it. I hesitated to put this in here, but I want to read it to you. This comes directly from the book, from Ann Salter, and it's called Pedophiles, Rapists, and Other Sex Offenders. If you don't have a strong stomach, I don't suggest you read this book, because it is all from the aspect of the predators. It's from their point of view. It is them giving their stories of how they groomed children and how they drew them in. I want to read this to you, though. This is I'll just read it. Mr. Saylor, an athletic director in the elementary school. So he was an athletic director at the elementary school. He abused his first victim when he was 13 years old. At age 13, he reports 11 male rape victims, 1 female rape victim, and approximately 1,250 male molest victims. After so many years of raping and molesting, and this is his words, I finally reached a point to where it was like I felt invincible. The children love me. They care about me. They're not going to tell regardless of what I do. And my thinking was always, even if they do tell, based on past conditions which parents did not believe the children, my thinking was they're going to not believe the child anyway. And if I got very bold with my molest, there were no boundaries for me. At any time that I saw an opportunity to get what I wanted, which was to rape or molest, I took advantage of it. There were other times that I molested and raped while at work, or I simply manipulated the child into coming into my office, and I simply locked the door and proceeded to do what I wanted to do in the office at the school. My nephew, I raped him for a period of 9 years. In very few cases did I do this in which nobody was at home. So he even says, he goes on to talk about how that some kids reported against him and nobody believed him because he was so liked by the community and he was so liked by the parents that it got twisted and turned around saying that the children were lying. How many times do we hear this? How many times is a story blown open about a teacher or a coach and the first thought is the community surrounds the person, oh, that couldn't have happened. There's no way, we know him. This story right here is so, because we see it play out in our news, and we see how that happens. So that's one of the skills they use. They're likable. Again, remember at the beginning I said we like to think that we could look in a crowded room and pick them out. We can't. They're likable. Another characteristic is they live a double life. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is about a young guy. He was a youth leader, and he would pray with the elderly. He would do community service. He was always working in the church and in the community. Let me see if I can find out. He had over 96 victims, and the first ones that started disclosing, nobody believed, because they looked at him as a young man that was a great guy and great in his community. It took over 100 kids, him abusing over 100 kids, before they finally believed him. Another trait that they have is they lie. That's another thing we like to think. We like to think that we can look at somebody and tell when they're lying, but that's often not true at all. The predators will spend a lot of time perfecting the skill of lying. Just like we spend time perfecting our skills in our jobs, our hobbies, etc., they learn how to get access to children without anybody suspecting them. Many times they can look you right in the eye and bold-faced lie, and we have no idea that it's even happening. This predator said, the manner which I used when I was trying to convince somebody, even though I knew I was lying, I looked them in the eye, but I wouldn't stare at them. Staring makes people uncomfortable, and that tends to turn them away. So I wouldn't stare at them, but look at them in a manner that, look at this innocent face. How could you believe I'd do something like that? It helps you if you have a good command of the vocabulary, where you can explain yourself in a way that is easily understood. Dress nice. Use fluent hand gestures that are not attacking in any way. The predator that I just read that from, he had over 100 victims. Another tool they use is gaining the trust of the parents and the child. It's huge. I'm not going to read all of that. I have a lot of stories from different predators. I'm not going to go into all of those. It would take me way too long. When I developed this, it was for a much longer class. Blending in, they look just like us. They're your neighbors, they're doctors, they're coaches, they're uncles, they're grandfathers, they're spouses. They do not come with a warning label. Boy, I wish they did. That would make it so much easier. Many times they prey on weak or disturbed children. They create a friendship. Okay, I want to talk a minute about child sex trafficking now. That is something that I added in recently because I'm hearing more and more about it. I think that I'm sure it's always went on for years and years and years and years, but it is finally starting to get where people are talking about it. So what is child sex trafficking? It's the act of recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, obtaining, patronizing, soliciting a child for commercial sex, including prostitution and the production of child pornography. Children make up 27% of all human trafficking victims worldwide, and 2 out of every 3 identified child victims are girls. 1.2 million children are trafficked every single year. 1.2 million children are trafficked every single year. A majority of the time, the victims are trafficked by someone they know, such as a friend or a family member. Human trafficking is not the same as smuggling, which the two terms are commonly confused. Trafficking does not require movement across borders. In fact, some cases, a child could be trafficked and exploited from their own home. So they don't have to be taken across borders. They don't have to go to a different state. They don't have to go to a different country for it to be trafficking. A parent, a family friend, a family member can traffic a child from their very own home. In the U.S., trafficking most frequently occurs at hotels, motels, truck stops, and online. Predators are everywhere online. The United States is one of the most active sex trafficking countries in the world, where exploitation of trafficking victims occurs in cities, suburban, and rural areas. It's everywhere. Predators target vulnerable children and gain control over them by using control, fear, manipulation. Sometimes they offer food, clothes, attention, friendship, love, and a safe place, seemingly safe place. After they cultivate the relationship and they create a false sense of trust, the predator will begin engaging the child in prostitution. They will then start using physical force if necessary, emotional and psychological abuse to keep the child trapped. They could be sex trafficking a child, and a parent or the parents may not even know. It happens all the time. Victims are heavily conditioned to remain loyal to the predator and distrust outside help and interference. No child is immune. The internet and mobile devices have helped to facilitate sex trafficking of children by providing a convenient and fast worldwide marketing channel. Predators can use the websites and social media to advertise, schedule, and purchase sexual meetings with children. And now, why are these sites not getting shut down? Why are they not being monitored? Why are they not being fact-checked? In fact, you can go on social media. I'm not going to start naming names because I don't want this video to get kicked. But even the one we're on right now, you can find groups that have pictures of children that are sexually suggestive. And when you report them, you will be told that it does not violate community standards. I've done it myself. I've seen them myself. As of 6 months ago, there were still groups out there. Unless it has been locked down since then, you probably still can find them. They're on every social media outlet. The internet can be used to lure that word sounds funny, children away from their homes under false pretenses. Now we're going to talk about some statistics regarding internet. The internet and kids, to me, is probably the most scary. I don't want to use the word scary because we don't have to live in fear. But I think that if I had small children, the internet would be the biggest target that I would guard because it's so unpoliced. It's just you have all of this out there and all of these people out there spending all of this time on the internet looking for children. Okay, so more than 500,000 predators are online every day looking for children. Kids 12 to 15 are susceptible to being groomed and manipulated by offenders online. The FBI stats show that more than 50% of victims of online sexual exploitation are between 12 and 15 years old. 89% of all sexual advances toward children take place in internet chat rooms and through instant messaging. So how predators connect with children online? Where do they find them? How do they get a hold of them? One, they create fake accounts and they pretend to be the same age as the child. They will approach our children acting like their peers, sometimes of the same sex or sometimes of the opposite sex. They use fake pictures. Many kids become friends with complete strangers online. 70% of kids accept friend requests, regardless if they know the person or not. So they can end up with all of these perps on their face. I don't want to say it because I don't want it to get kicked out. I don't know if it will or not, but on their social media, or I probably can say it, on their Facebook, they will accept all of these friends and they don't even know who they are. So they could be who knows who on their social media. And kids are not careful online. They genuinely will show everything. They will tag where they're at, what time they're there, what school they go to, what sports they're involved in. So they could have 100 friends on there that they don't even know who they are, and they're telling everything about their personal life. We're going to go into internet safety here in just a little bit. So some other places they find them on the internet is through gaming. That is another huge thing. A lot of the gaming systems now, your Xbox, your PS, whatever, I don't even know the names of all of them, whatever, the names of all the gaming systems, they have the capacity to do online play. And so the kids can play playing video games online, but then in their headset, they're talking to people from all over. And if you're not real careful, they can start being groomed that way because predators absolutely hang out in the gaming rooms. So I already said social media, chats, and even YouTube in the comments section. The more information kids post about themselves online, the easier it is for a predator to find them. So, for example, pictures of kids in sports uniforms, like the name of their school, talking about their school or activities, posting where they're at on their status updates, using Foursquare, which is a geolocation site, which actually tags exactly where they're at. There are many opportunities for a predator to complete the puzzle and find out more about the child, their taste in music, what kind of TV shows they like, and where they're located. So when they put all this information out there, A predator can sit back and learn all kinds of stuff about them and then reach out to them pretending to be someone of the same age and having the same interest. Oh, I see you like Batman. Well, I love Batman, because they've already went in and done their diligence on finding out everything about the child. Many kids are really indiscriminate about the information they post online. More than half of teens have given out personal information online to someone they do not know. Many 13 to 17-year-olds have updated their status on social networking sites to include their physical location. 28% have chatted with strangers. 12% have posted their cell phone number. Predator, I already said that. After the predator has made contact with the child, even if it's online, that's when the grooming begins. That's when they start becoming friends. That's when they start reconnecting. Also, a lot of times, they will reach out to kids who are in turmoil. We already kind of talked about that. But they'll pick up on it by their post, by things that they're saying online, and they will reach out to them to be that buddy that's there to listen. You know, kids want somebody to listen to them. They need somebody to listen to them. And predators won't be that for them. They will offer that for them. They'll offer to give them support. They'll offer to validate their feelings. They'll offer to side with them in every situation. And then a lot of times it will start turning to sexual talk. They'll start asking for them to send them pictures. They'll start asking for nude photos. And if children do, because this happens a lot of times, so a kid will think they're talking to somebody the same age. Say you have a 13-year-old. They think they're talking to another 13-year-old, 14, 15, however old. And they ask for nude photos after however long of grooming. And then they send those photos. Then what will happen is the perpetrator will hold on to that photo and say, if you don't send me more, I'm going to tell your parents you're doing this. And then, of course, the child's scared to death because they know that they wasn't supposed to be sending those pictures. So then the perpetrator will use that to get them to continue sending more and more pictures. There was actually a recent case of that. There was a 13-year-old girl in Massachusetts, and she sent a naked photo, and come to find out the man was 35 years old, and he threatened her if she didn't send more, that he would tell her family. Okay. So now another thing that I want to bring to your attention. I'm not going to go deep into this at all. I just want you to be aware that it's out there because I want you to do your own research. I'm just kind of hitting all around different places because this is just an overview. This is very long, very detailed, and a ton of information, but this honestly is just an overview. If you have never heard of this, I want you to do some research. It's called NAMBLA, N-A-M-B-L-A. It stands for the North American Man-Boy Love Association. I want you to look it up and research it. They are constantly trying, it's an organization, and they're constantly trying to lower the age of consent. They get less legislation before Congress trying to lower the age of consent. It's not just a group of weirdos or anything like that. We would hope it was and we would think it was, but it's not. They have rich and powerful members that are pushing the agenda to say that there is no age of consent. What their goal is that any child should be permitted to have sexual relations with adults. And they call it consensual sexual relations with adults. They will not call it abuse. They say that it is relationships. Their goal is to end, and this is their words, their goal is to end the extreme oppression of men and boys in mutually consensual relationships. Have a strong stomach before you go to their website, but check them out because it's out there. And we need to know it's out there because here's the thing. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Do I want to be talking about this? No, not necessarily. Do I want to research this stuff? No. Like, I want to pretend like it doesn't even happen, part of me, because it so overwhelms me to think about the abused children. But if we react that way, nothing changes. Until we start talking about it, until we start saying, no, we're not going to hide from it. We're not going to turn a blind eye to it. We're going to speak out, speak up about it. We're going to normalize talking about abuse so that kids can come forward, they can be comfortable. And not only that, we're going to shine the light on the predators so that they can't squirm away and hide in the darkness. That's what it's going to take to make this stuff stop. So we really have to dig in, and we have to do our research. We have to educate ourselves. So now I'm going to talk about tips to protecting your children. This is, I'm going to have a lot of tips. If you want to go back and rewatch and just rewind to this part, I'm at 6 minutes and 45, or I'm sorry, it's 6:45. I don't know how long I'm in. I was looking at the wrong thing. But this is really the meat of what we're talking about, how to protect your children. This is a quick reference list, this short one right here, and then I'm going to go into more detail. So the first step is educate yourself. Educate you and educate your children. Teach them about their personal boundaries with their bodies. Teach them more than just stranger danger. Everything I've talked about tonight, I've not even talked about stranger danger because they get that in school. They get that at home. We are able to tell them, beware of this and beware of that. So that part's not missing. The parts that's missing is personal boundaries with their bodies, even with family members, even with friends, even with coaches, even with teachers. So the next part is be aware of who your child is with at all times. I'm not talking about paranoia. I'm not talking about fear. I'm talking about awareness and education. Trust your gut. You do not owe anybody any explanation. If you feel like something is off, go with that. That book that I was telling you about that I read, so many times they said that parents came to them with a little bit of suspicion and they was able to talk their way out of it. So that tells me parents had a gut feeling that something was off, but then they were swayed by what the person said. You don't owe anybody any explanation. If you don't want your child with them, you have that right. That's your child. So don't go by, I'm going to hurt their feelings, or what if that, if you have a gut feeling, go with it. Yeah. Shelley, look them up. What I said was a very, very small portion of their agenda. And it goes deep. It goes really deep. Their members go deep. Their pockets go deep. Their connections go deep. And it's not conspiracy theory stuff. It's out there. Like, you can legit look them up on the internet and find their website. Yeah. That happens a lot of times. Kids will disclose once they're no longer around the person. I'm sorry you went through that. That's rough. That's really rough. And you support the statistics we've been talking about, that a family member, a lot of times it is a family member or someone known to the family. Another tip to do, investigate. If it looks weird, find out why. Why does something not look right? Why does something not feel right? Why does something feel off? Why is something not settling just right? Listen to your children and watch what they're not saying. Watch for body language. And I'm going to give you a huge list of possible symptoms of sexual abuse that you can look for. So you're not necessarily looking for what they're saying. You're looking for what they're doing. And the next part is knowing the signs of sexual abuse. Listen and watch for inconsistencies in your children and the people that have access to your children. If things just don't connect and things just aren't making sense, pay attention to that and figure out why. Watch the body language of those around you and notice if it matches what they are saying, and avoid high-risk situations. Okay, so now we're going to go into more detail about each step of how to keep our children safe. Number one, like I said, is education. We must have to actively seek to educate ourselves about predators, how they operate, where they operate, and how they seek to get close to our children. Is it hard to immerse yourself in that? Yes, it is, but it's worth it, I promise you. We can't just think we know what we know. We have to look for material. We have to educate ourselves. The book I was telling you about, it's horrendous. It is difficult to read, but it opened my eyes so much to how they operate. And it was so worth reading it because I learned so much. And so I just want to encourage you, do your research. Also, I want to go over the children's rights. I found this and I love this. And if my son was young again, I would absolutely have taught him this, and I would have enforced every single one of them. So the children's rights, they have a right to say no to touch or other behaviors that make them feel confused or bad. If I had this when my son was like 2 and 3, I would have started then. I would have put it in his own language for his own age appropriate, make it age appropriate, but I would have started with the children's rights for him. They have the right to ask questions when they are mixed up or confused by someone's touch or behavior. They have a right to trust their feelings when they are uncomfortable or feel strange about someone's touch or their behavior. They have a right to not be forced or tricked into touch by which they are hurt or told to keep a secret. By the way, anytime your child says that them and someone else has a secret, if it's not another little kid, that is a key thing you want to hone in on and figure out what that secret is. Children have a right to ask for help when needed, inside or outside the family. Children need safe people in all areas of their life. Children have the right to break a promise or secret when someone is being hurt as a result. It is imperative to teach your children that secrets don't hurt. A secret should never include something painful. Children have the right to feel safe and feel protective. Children have the right to have some things clearly defined as private, their very own, that no one else has a right to touch, and it would be objects, space, or their body parts defined as private without their permission. So they need to be taught what I always, I used to teach good touch, bad touch in the schools. I did that for a short period of time. And I always taught that private parts were anything that your bathing suit covered, and that nobody has a right to touch those unless you're hurt and you need to go to the doctor, or if you need help in the bathroom from a trusted family like mom or dad. I can't remember exactly how I worded it, or go into the bathroom. So in other words, a bath time, go into the bathroom, or if you're hurt. And it should only be for help. It should never make you scared. It should never hurt you. It should never be uncomfortable. And it should never be forced. And it's okay to teach your kids that they have personal boundaries and that they have their own space. It's healthy. They should know that their body is theirs and that no one has the right to touch it unless they need help. Because, kids get hurt and kids need help and kids need help in the bathroom. But there's a way to teach it to where it's only if they need help. That nobody has the right to make them feel uncomfortable. Nobody has a right to force them to be touched. This one is a little, you may think, oh, this is pushing it. Looking back, I absolutely would have done this. Children do not have to always kiss family members they do not feel comfortable kissing. I was guilty of this. I was in a big church. Everybody wanted to pass my son around. Oh, hug them goodbye, hug them goodbye. Family was the same way. I did not teach him from a young age that he had his own personal space. I didn't know any different. Looking back, I absolutely would not have been making him hug everybody and, kiss everybody goodbye, all of those things. I'm not talking about withholding affection. I'm just saying that the child should have a right to say, I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. Now, when they're young, you have to pick up on their body language. You have to see they're not comfortable. And if you're forcing them to hug and kiss people, that will reinforce the behavior if they are ever sexually abused, because it's the same thing. Someone forcing them to do something they're not comfortable with. Yeah, I'll leave that there. I hope you know what I'm saying, and I hope you know where I'm coming from. They just need to be allowed to have their own space and their own bodies and not do things that make them feel uncomfortable. And they need to be taught boundaries, that they can have boundaries from a young age. Because when those boundaries are ran all over, they won't know the difference. They won't understand why that it's okay when the boundaries are crossed when mom and dad says it's okay, versus, well, why is it not okay when somebody else tries to cross the boundaries and I don't want them to? Kids should be allowed to have boundaries. Children need to know that adults are not always right, because there's the power and control. If a perpetrator is saying, well, it's because I'm the adult, or because I'm this, or because I'm that, kids need to know that just because someone is an adult does not mean they're always right, and it doesn't always mean that they're doing the right thing. Children need to be informed as to who they can turn to for help. You need to teach your children who a safe person is. They need to understand that sexual abuse is not their fault. You need to give them permission to say no and tell. Now, this seems like really simple things. Well, kids should know that they can tell. They don't know they can tell. They don't. I worked with, back in the day when I had my social work hat on, and I was in the schools and I was working with kids don't know that they can say no. They have to be taught that they're allowed to say no to adults. They have to be taught that they can say no to being touched. They need to be taught that they need to tell, because they don't know. It is not just innate. It is not just in them. And when you have an adult that is more powerful than them, more controlling than them, and manipulative, that is doing everything in their power to get them not to tell, you have to be reinforcing what to tell, who to tell, and when to tell. We should explain the difference to a child between a surprise and a secret. A surprise is fun, and it's okay, and it's a thing for like a party or a gift. Secrets can make people feel uncomfortable and unsafe. Tell children that if they're asked to keep a secret about touching, they are allowed to say no, and they need to find a trusted adult to tell. Let them know they have the right to say no, even if someone threatens them or it's someone that they know, especially if it's someone they know. Help children identify the trusted adults in their life and go over that with them often. Kids forget. Go over these things with them often. It's not a one and done. This is conversations that you will be having throughout their lifetime, and you'll get more in detail as they get older. Talk openly about whom a child would go to in an emergency. Give them specific examples, such as the person using a cash register at the mall, or a mother with a child, or a teacher, or a police officer. If you're out in public and they need to go to help, give them specific instructions on who they would go to in every situation in their life. If you're at school, this is who you would go to. If you're at church, this is who you would go to. If you are on the playground, this is who you would go to. If you're at the store, this is who you would go to. Teach children about setting their own boundaries. Let them know what the boundaries are and let them set them. Teach children the buddy system, that they would never want to go off alone by themselves, and that would be more with a stranger danger. But that's a good one to learn. Like, don't go off on your own. Teach children to check with trusted adults before changing plans or going anywhere, even with adults the children know. So they should always be letting everybody know where they're going to be at and when. Teach them telephone skills, even from a young age. Teach them how to use the phone to call 911 for help. The way that you can enforce all of these is by role playing with your child. You can do role play, different scenarios. It's just like riding a bike. They don't learn about it by talking to them about it. You have to practice it with them. They learn by doing. So role playing is how you will teach them to learn these skills. Play the what if game and help them think of responses. Let them come up with it. Well, what if this happened? What would you do? And listen for their answer. Let them, in their own mind, come up with how they would handle it. Choose a real-life situation, such as confronting a stranger while walking to school. What would they do? What would they do if a stranger come up to them and tried to get them to help? Do a role play if the babysitter tried to do something that made them feel uncomfortable. Like if the babysitter tried to get them to watch something they wasn't supposed to, or do something they wasn't supposed to. What if the school bus didn't arrive on time? So have them practice all of these different things. Also have them practice using their loud voice. Have them practice saying no. This one was always fun when I taught in school. The kids got a kick out of this. But have them practice what they would do if someone was trying to hurt them. Have them stomp their foot. Have them clap their hands. Have them scream no. What you're doing is you're giving them their voice, and you're empowering them to be able to stand up when something is happening. It seems like a fun game, but you would be amazed at how it comes back to their memory when they need it. They need to review these safety skills often. Research shows that these skills need to be taught 5 to 10 times a year. You can review them during a car ride or other moments together. You don't have to make it something weird and where everybody just has to sit down. It can be just put into your regular normal lives. You can be doing a craft and say, hey, what would you do if this happened? Or let me hear what you would say if somebody tried to do this. You can add it in anywhere. And that's really how it should be. It shouldn't be a boring thing. It shouldn't be a weird thing. It should just be added into your normal daily lives. Or not daily, but excuse me. Okay, now we're going to go into internet safety. This is a huge one. And this is for all ages of kids because most kids, even little ones, have access to the internet, which that's changing. So this is the area where I really had to beef up because this has changed a lot. Predators are all over chat rooms. They're all over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the other social media outlets. They're adding new ones every day. I couldn't even list them all because there's so many. They're also all over the gaming systems. When we are online, we have to remember we have no idea who we're really chatting with. We have no idea who we're opening our lives up to. That is something I even consider because going on lives, I have friends who have young children and they have said that they have found, okay, let me back up. I'm tripping over my words. I have friends who do lives and they have had their small children on the live with them. And then they have seen pictures of their small children floating around on Facebook that had been taken during the live. So when we put our kids on Facebook, it can go all over the place. And I'm not saying like, I get it. You want to share your pictures with your friends. You want to share your pictures with your family. You want to share your life with everybody else. Just be aware, if your Facebook is public, is set on public, anybody can get access to your material that you put on there. And just be aware of that. Just keep it in your mind, knowing that, you need to be careful about people finding out exactly where you live, especially if you have kids in your pictures. You need to be careful about them finding out what school the kids go to. And just being aware of that. 1 in 5 children are solicited sexually while on the internet before the age of 18. Approximately 1 in 7 youth internet users received unwanted sexual solicitation. 1 in 25 youth received an online sexual solicitation in which the solicitor tried to make an offline contact. And I know I've been hearing about that, and you guys probably have too, where kids are being lured out of their home and away from home they think, like, especially I hear a lot with young teenage girls, they think they're meeting boys their same age. And so they sneak out at night or they sneak away from school, come to find out they're meeting an adult male and they had no idea. They thought that it was a person their age because anybody can make a fake profile. It can look like anything and they can talk like a kid, but it's an adult. And that's why we have to teach our kids about this. So for internet safety, again, educate yourself about what your children are being exposed to online. Some of this stuff, I had no idea. I don't have young ones at home anymore. When I started looking it up, I was amazed at the statistics and the numbers and all of that. We already kind of talked about not posting personal information and the pictures that show your school emblems, the names, your address. But you need to talk to your kids about doing the same because kids are not careful online at all. They are accepting any friendships from anybody. They don't even know the people and they're accepting them. They're tagging themselves exactly where they're at, what time they're going to be there. They are putting all of their habits online. They live their whole lives through selfies online. And kids have no idea how much danger they put themselves in. And I see even young kids posting their lives on the internet. Have all passwords of your children's devices. Now, some parents say, well, they need their own privacy. I guess that, it depends on how you feel about that. In my opinion, safety trumps privacy, especially the younger kids. I would have passwords to everything, because you need to be able to check if something's going on with your child and you see their behaviors changing and you see something's going on. You have to be able to know you have to be able to find out, in my opinion. I would check their online activity. I would see where they're going, who they're talking to. It's not that you are being nosy. It's not that you're being controlling. It's that you are being careful, because we know there are predators everywhere. Use as many parental controls as possible on all devices, especially for the younger kids. Do not allow young children to have access to any type of online device behind closed doors, and that includes gaming systems. If you have an 8-year-old child, don't let them have a gaming device online in their bedroom with the door closed. That is an open invitation for a predator to solicit that child. Maybe they need to just keep their door open. Maybe they need to play it in the living room. They don't need to have the computer in their bedroom, especially small children, because you need to be able to hear what's going on. You need to be able to see what's going on. If they get secretive, every time you walk in the room, they get quiet. Every time you walk in the room, they shut their device off. Every time you walk in the room, they're hiding the screen. You need to investigate why. Teach your children not to give their username and password to anyone, not even friends. Teach them not to post nudes or semi-nudes. This is especially true for teenagers. I see this all of the time and hear about this all the time. They're sexting and they're sending each other nude or semi-nude pictures. And when they're boyfriend and girlfriend, they think it's really cute and they think it's fun. But what happens is when they break up, that picture is still out there. Teach your children that anytime they send anything online, it never goes away. There is no way to completely scrub it from the internet. It is out there somewhere. And the second that you put it on the internet, it is fair game to anybody. So at the time, if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend and you think it's all cute and it's all fun and we're just being funny and we're being silly and we're sending these pictures back and forth, what happens whenever you get mad at each other and that picture gets sent to the entire school? Make sure you are telling your kids about these things, because it happens all the time and it's devastating when it does. Teach them to never ever meet anyone in person from online they do not know. This is huge. Even if they have been talking to this person for a year or 6 months, never ever meet them in person at all by yourself. I see a lot of people go into that, Shelley, or they will either, you can change the settings on your pictures or on your post and you can make them private to where just your friends can see them. Some people do that too. I don't have any little ones right now, so I don't really have to worry about it. But hopefully one day in the future, I'll have some grandkids. One day. Or close. I do have a grandchild, but not close. So, sorry I got off on a tangent, or off from reading a comment. Make sure that they never meet anyone online in person, because that's how kids get kidnapped. That's how kids get taken. That's how they get taken into sex trafficking. That's how predators get a hold of them. They get them away from the home and then they meet them. The kids think they're meeting someone their same age and they're just going to hang out and they're going to have fun. And it's not that person. If your children are meeting someone online and it's a new person that you guys don't know and they want to meet somewhere, go with them. Never ever tell them to never ever go by themselves. Get the parents involved, their parents and you guys. Talk to your children about online risk. Don't try to hide it from them. Have open, honest conversations. Kids get it. They get way more than we give them credit for. They understand way more. They get way more. But if you just go in and say, I'm taking all your devices and I'm putting these parental controls on and I'm putting all these passwords on, the first thing they're going to think of, oh my goodness, you're just being nosy. Talk to them. Have open, honest communication. Even if you have teenagers right now and you're like, I really want to implement some of this, but I don't know how it will go over. Just talk to them. Let them know where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of concern. Show them the statistics. You guys sit in front of the computer together and Google some of this stuff and let them read it for themselves. Give them an assignment. You go look up and see how many times this happens to kids and let them pull it up and read it for themselves. Have open, honest communication, no matter how old the child is. Talk about online risk, including while gaming. especially gaming, because that seems so innocent. They're just on there playing games, but it's really not. It's full of predators. Social media, teach them about the tactics of predators offering gifts and requesting nudes and grooming. Don't be afraid to talk to them. Tell them to only friend people on social media that they know, that they personally know. Turn their webcam off when it is not in use. Make sure that their webcam is not just left on all of the time. Do not use the webcam with people they do not know. Teach your child that if they get in a situation that feels uncomfortable, they should and can always come to you and that they won't get in trouble. Make sure they understand that no matter what they've done and no matter what is going on, that they can come to you if they're uncomfortable. This is a app, I think. I Googled it, but I didn't open it up. It's called Screen Retriever. SCREENRETRIEVER. And it's one word. And it enables parents to monitor the children's computer activity live whenever the child's computer is located in the home. So, and when your child is communicating with using their webcam. So you put that on your device and it tracks their device. So that way, no matter what room in the house they're in, you can track at the exact time what they're doing and who they're doing it with and if their camera's on or not. Set limits and ground rules about what your child is allowed to do online, what sites they're allowed to visit, information they're allowed to post, who their friends are, who they're chatting with. This one is very important. Learn the language the kids are using online. I did not make a list because the list is huge. It is like they made up their own foreign language. It could be right in front of you and you may have no idea what they're saying to each other. I wouldn't. They have sexual innuendos and sexual talk and all kinds of things about drinking, alcohol, drugs. And if you don't know the lingo, you may have no idea what they're talking about. They use acronyms for a lot of things. You can Google that. Have the list so you know exactly what you're looking at. When your children comes to you with a problem, don't overreact and explode on them so that they feel comfortable coming to you when something is going on. Okay, now I'm going to go into symptoms of sexual abuse. Now, with this list, it does not mean if your child has one or two of these or something that they have 100% automatically, they've been abused. I'm going over this list because I want to bring it to your attention so that if you start seeing some of these behaviors, you can dig deeper and figure out what's going on. You can talk to their doctor. You can take them to a therapist. You can talk to them. Just as a way of saying, okay, this is on my radar, something, is going on, I don't know what. Because with a lot of these behaviors, it could be a lot of different things that are going on. It may be that things at school are not good. They may be getting bullied. It may be that they're having stress. It could be a lot of different things. So I don't want anybody, like if I go through this and it's like, oh my goodness, my child's doing 10 of these. Don't go into a panic because I want you to just step back and say something is going on. I don't know what, but let's figure it out and get help. Because sometimes on our own, we can't figure it out because kids just won't talk to parents a lot of times. You can have the school counselor talk to them. You can take them to the doctor. You can have whoever's close to them to talk to them. But it's just so that you can kind of know some things to look for. Before I go into that, I kind of want to talk about what age-appropriate sexual behaviors are, because not all sexual behaviors are indicative of abuse. There are natural age-appropriate behaviors, and that would be natural and healthy sexual exploration during childhood. It's just an information gathering process. Children all do this, where they explore their own body, and sometimes they even explore the bodies of their friends, especially like when they're little and they start realizing that their body may look different than their brothers, that sisters is different than brothers. That's normal. That's normal for them to notice differences. It's normal for them to notice their bodies and the bodies of others. The big thing is that it is not all consuming. It is not all they think about, all they're doing, and all they're talking about. It is just an exploration. It is they're noticing, and that's the big difference. So some signs of abuse could be waking up during the night sweating, screaming, or shaking with nightmares. If your child is having nightmares, make sure you're finding out what the nightmares are. What do they relate to? What are they around? What are they seeing? Excessive masturbation. That's huge. That can happen especially in young children. If you have a child who is just consumed with that, I would suggest taking them to somebody to see why they're consumed with it. Showing unusual aggressive behavior toward family members, friends, toys, and pets. If you are seeing out of the blue a ton of aggression and a ton of anger, and they didn't used to be that way, and they're wanting to physically harm other people, that could be an indicator. Complaining of pain while urinating, or having a bowel movement, or exhibiting symptoms of genital infections such as offensive odors, or symptoms of sexually transmitted diseases. Sometimes when children are being frequently abused, they can end up with urinary tract infections often. They can end up with bladder issues. They can also end up with STDs. Children are not too young to catch those, unfortunately. Having symptoms indicating evidence of physical trauma to the genital or anal area. If there's any bruising, bleeding, even if there's bruises on their thighs. Beginning wetting the bed after a period of being fully potty trained. So if you have a child who has went from being 100% potty trained for a period of time and then they revert back, that can be a symptom. Experiencing a loss of appetite or other eating problems, including unexplained gagging, like when they put the food in their mouth, if they're just gagging for having food in their mouth, for obvious reasons. Showing unusual fear of certain place or location. If you have a child that's never been afraid of a certain place, especially like if it's a bedroom, a bathroom, a shower, a bed, or a different place like that, and all of a sudden they become extremely fearful of that area where they didn't used to have a problem. Developing frequent unexplained health problems. Some of that can be related to anxiety, so like stomach issues, vomiting, even diarrhea. Engaging in persistent sexual play with friends, toys, or pets. This would be ones where they just seem focused, hyper-focused on that type of play. And you try to redirect them, you try to teach them not to play that way, but they continually go back to that. Having unexplained periods of panic, which may be flashbacks from the abuse. Kids are not too young to show symptoms of PTSD. Children absolutely can have PTSD. Regressing to behaviors too young for the stage of development that they've already achieved. So again, you're going past your milestones, but then you're regressing back to them. Older children may start sucking their thumb. They may start needing a blanket when they didn't need one before. They may start doing baby talk. Initiating sophisticated sexual behaviors, not age appropriate, and can be actions and or vocabulary. So if you have a child who, like your child, and you know they've not been exposed to any type of sexual material, and they start talking about sexual acts that they should have no way of knowing what they're talking about, you need to figure out where that came from and why. Indicating a sudden reluctance to be alone with a certain person. Is there somebody they seem fearful of? Pick up on their body language. Watch their body language. Even if they're not saying it, is there somebody that they shy away from? Is there somebody that they pull away from? Is there somebody they don't want to be around? Engaging in self-mutilation, such as sticking themselves with pins or cutting themselves. Withdrawing from previously enjoyable activities like school or school performance change. That could be an indicator of depression. Asking an unusual number of questions about human sexuality. Again, like they're fixated and they just will not move on. Unexplained pregnancies. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Complaints of stomach and abdominal pain. Yeast infections. Evidence of vomiting, like purging food. Persistent sore throat. Radical change of appearance. signs of exhaustion and lack of sleep, possession of unexplained gifts and money, signs of intoxication after spending time with adults or other older adolescents, attempts to be unattractive. Do they start hiding their body? All of a sudden, do you have a child who they don't want to be attractive? They stop combing their hair. They stop taking a shower. They start wearing oversized clothes because they don't want anybody to look at their body. Radical mood swings. Inappropriately seductive. I've seen this with my own eyes. I've seen children who have been sexually abused, and then they are overly seductive, like children who are, they do like, I don't know how else to put it, but like seductive eye movements at men, or they move their body in a seductive manner. It's hard to explain unless you've seen it, but like, yeah, I don't know how else to explain it, but I've seen it. And my theory is because they've been forced to act that way, so then they act that way in other areas of their life. Overachievement or underachievement, depression, crying, substance abuse or addiction, calling themselves damaged goods. Or can you pick up on they treat themselves like they're damaged goods? Do they feel shame and guilt? They don't like their body, they don't like themselves. Angry, hostile, aggressive behavior, fear of being photographed, anxiety reaction to authority figures, fear of undressing or refusal to undress. I've heard of that happening where kids have went to the doctor and the parent has tried to undress them and they just throw a fit. Intense efforts to gain attention or affection from adults, suicidal thinking and attempts, killing or torturing animals, self-hatred, run away, fear of the dark, find reasons to not be with somebody they used to spend time with. So like they start making excuses why they can't be around that person anymore. Unable to concentrate, daydreaming, spacing out in a world of their own, withdrawn or isolated. This one's sad, but it does happen, especially in adolescence, becoming a perpetrator themselves, where they target a child, a sibling, or a friend. Many times, children will reenact the sexual abuse on those younger than them. That happens a lot. Fear of the parent leaving them. Not wanting someone, including a parent, to change his or her diaper or give him or her a bath. Like they just cling to their clothes. They don't want their clothes taken off. This is another one, and I've had a lot of experience in this one when I was a family therapist. It will be older children, and they will smear their feces a lot of times. I have no idea why and how it's connected to sexual abuse other than to say it is because I've seen it myself. Blood in urine or stool. Sexual behaviors that are significantly different than other same-age children. And sexual behaviors that continue in spite of being told to stop and trying to redirect them. They may appear unable to stop from engaging in sexual behaviors, and that can include touching themselves. Sexually reactive children will often replay the abuse. So if you see your child playing with toys and they are being abusive in nature, they can be replaying that. They can do that with classmates or friends or siblings. It's called sexual reactivity, and they're replaying the abuse out. They may ask other people to start taking their clothes off. They may want to see other people undress. They may take their own clothes off and refuse to put them back on. They may refuse to leave people alone in the bathroom. They just stay in the bathroom and won't go away. Or they won't be by themselves in the bathroom. They may force another child to take their clothes off to play doctor. They may use coercion, force, or pain on their own genitalia or on those of someone else. Their drawings, like they may do drawings, and the most predominant feature, they may do nudes of people. They may hate their own genitalia. They may want it gone. They may have sexual behaviors with children or with animals. So, okay. They may think of their own body as repulsive, dirty, or bad. So, if what you're mainly looking for too is a sudden change of behavior. Your child will let you know often that something is going up when they have that something is going on. If they have a sudden change of behavior, it may not be sexual abuse. They could be getting bullied at school. They could have a teacher that's mean to them. They could be having stress about their own bodies because they're not happy with themselves. But basically the thing is, figure out what's going on. If you have a child that was always happy-go-lucky and everything was funny and everything was fun, and all of a sudden they're downcast, they look like they're in a depression, nothing is good, they're negative, you need to find out why that complete and total switch happened. And also the same way, if you have a child who was always mopey and just seemed down and negative, and all of a sudden they're super giddy, you need to find out why. Any sudden changes in behavior, you need to research into your child's life and find out what's going on, why the sudden change. If you have a child who was always open with everything they did, and they always sat in the living room with you, and they shared about their day, and then all of a sudden they're staying in their bedroom all the time. You walk in and they shut down whatever they're doing and they're not sharing anything with you anymore. You need to find out why they're not sharing and what they're not sharing. If you have a child who used to hang out with their friends all the time and all of a sudden they're pulling away from those friends and they're wanting to hang out with somebody else or they're wanting to do something else, you need to figure out what that something else is. Any sudden changes in behavior, attitudes, personality, you want to dig deeper. So now how to handle, this is the last portion, we are almost done. How to handle if your child or a child discloses abuse to you. The first thing to do is report. It is not your job to investigate. If a child tells you anything about abuse, you need to report it. It is the job of CPS and the police to investigate it. You don't have to decide if you think it's true. You don't have to decide if you think that person could have done it. You don't have to decide where did it happen, how did it happen. You don't have to have all the details. Just report it. That's the first thing you need to do. You need to listen to the child. You need to believe the child. And you need to validate the child. Even if in the back of your mind you're like, I don't know. You need to validate the child. Because children usually do not make up abuse. That is usually something. Now, does it happen? I'm sure. I don't even know the statistics. When parents are going through divorces, I have heard of that happening where one tries to put it in the mind of the kid for the other. I don't know. The abuse could have been there anyway. But what you need to do is report it. You need to validate it. You need to believe it. And you need to side with the child. You need to immediately remove the child from the vicinity of the person who they're saying is abusing them until the investigation can happen. Because you don't want that perpetrator to continue having access to the child. Even if you're not sure, even if you don't know, remove them from the vicinity of the perpetrator and validate their feelings. Assure them it was not their fault and that you do not feel any differently about them. Never assume that children tell, because they usually don't. Kids don't tell. It can take years for them to be able to get the courage up to tell. When they tell you, celebrate that. Reaffirm them that they did the right thing. Assure them. Don't let them see you devastated. Are you going to be devastated? Absolutely. Don't let them see that. Let them see you offering them support. Let them see you validating everything they're saying. Children do not just bounce back. You know, the old saying, oh, children are resilient. They bounce back. They're fine. That is not true. They adjust and they conceal. They repress. And sometimes they accept it and move on. But they don't just bounce back. You have to get them help. Make sure you get your child help. Make sure that they have someone to talk to. Make sure they're being validated. And make sure on the spiritual side that you are doing warfare for them on their behalf to close every door that the enemy has tried to open through the abuse. Make sure you are praying over them. You are going into deep warfare on their behalf, because statistically speaking, kids who have been abused can suffer from a lifetime of issues. A lifetime. They're more likely to be depressed, more likely to have health issues, more likely to have anxiety, more likely to have other major mental illnesses, more likely to have PTSD. The list goes on and on and on and on. Get them help at a very young age. Pray over them. Pray, pray, pray. And validate every single thing and stick by them. No matter what, stick by them. What can you do if you don't have children? You know, all of this can be like, it sounds great. That's great. I don't have any young kids. That's all right. I don't either. We can shine the light into the dark places. We can do things like this. We can talk about it. We can not be afraid to share about it. We can support. There is Operation Underground Railroad. They go in and they free kids who have been sex trafficked. We can send them money. We can send them support. We can share their Facebook pages. We can be a voice for the voiceless until they have their own voice, by spreading the word, by not shying away from this topic, by not making it taboo, by not saying, oh, we can't talk about that. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We have to bring it out in the open, and we have to normalize being able to talk about it. There is still so much shame connected to even saying I'm a sexual abuse survivor. I don't carry that shame because I laid it down years ago, but there is still shame that comes with that. We have to take that away, because the shame is never the survivors, it's the perpetrator. But somehow along the line, it gets put onto the survivor, and we have to change that. And the only way we can do that is by bringing light to it. So I appreciate everybody who made it through with me. I had a ton of material. I had 17 pages of material, and I knew it would take me a while. And this is just scratching the surface. I mean, honestly, we are just scratching the surface. There's so much more out there. So I want to encourage you, dig in and find out, share, talk to other people. If you know people who have kids, talk to them. Are you talking to your kids? Are you making them aware of these things? Share some of the statistics with them. They're staggering. Find your own statistics. There's more out there, way more. I only shared a tiny bit of them. But be a voice. Be a voice. If you have healed from childhood sexual abuse, tell others. Tell others that you are a survivor and you healed. Tell them how you healed. Tell them how you're making it. Tell them how you survived. Because there are many, many, many more. And there's many children coming up behind us who are going to need to know how to survive. They're going to need to know how to heal. They're going to need to know that there is life after abuse. They're going to need to know that it won't always be the way it is right now. And so thank you guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. I will see you all soon on here at some point. I'll talk to you all later. Good night.